Have you ever followed every Feng Shui tip, but still felt like your money just keeps slipping through the cracks? Like, no matter how hard you work, the cash comes in, but never really stays? Turns out, it might not be your mindset. It might just be your kitchen. Yup, your cozy, familiar kitchen. With the nice countertop and the brand new fridge, could be quietly burning your wealth energy without you ever noticing. Because in Feng Shui, the kitchen isn't just where we cook. It's where money, luck, wealth, qi, and family abundance are cooked too. But here's the twist. It's not the color of your cabinets or how expensive your cookware is. It's the hidden energy traps in everyday things. Your stove, your fridge, even your countertop clutter. And they're easy to miss. If this kind of wisdom speaks to you, if you've ever felt like you're doing everything to stay afloat, and it still isn't flowing, thank you for being here. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, or even drop a comment below. It helps YouTube know you're part of this quiet shift. Because today, we're not just talking about kitchens. We're cracking open the 5 most common kitchen Feng Shui mistakes that quietly block your money flow, drain your lucky energy, and leave your wealth on a slow simmer instead of a steady boil. Let's take a closer look. Every space tells a story. And in Feng Shui, your kitchen isn't just a room, it's the heartbeat of wealth. But the energy it holds doesn't shout. It simmers quietly in habits, patterns, and overlooked corners. That's where the real leaks begin. When Josh moved into his condo, the kitchen was the one thing he loved most. Big window, clean layout. And that gas stove? Brand new, top line. But a few months in, something didn't sit right. He wasn't broke, but the flow of money felt jittery. Jobs came in weird waves. Some weeks, the tips were great. Other times, it felt like every bill came at once. He kept telling himself it was just freelance life. But deep down, something about the apartment felt weird. Not spooky, not heavy, just off rhythm. It was like his money couldn't settle. Couldn't stretch out. Couldn't stay. Josh's kitchen looked modern, even Feng Shui approved at first glance. But there was one tiny habit that created a quiet imbalance. He always used just one burner on the stove. Same burner, same corner, every single time. It was faster, closer to the sink. That's all. But in Feng Shui, the stove represents wealth and prosperity. And each burner carries its own flow of abundance. When we only use one, it's like saying to the universe, I only need this much. That trapped the wealth qi in one direction. And over time, the energy around money started behaving the same way. Predictable, limited, and lopsided. It wasn't just Feng Shui in theory. Josh felt it in his body too. Rushing to cover things last minute, never quite catching up. The money was cooking, but only on low heat. And that one lonely burner became a symbol of how narrow his energy flow had become. Josh's story mirrors a common energy pattern. The efficiency survivalist. People like Josh are sharp, adaptive, practical. They figure out quick solutions. They make do. But deep down, they've been taught maybe by life, maybe by struggle, to ask for just enough, to not use more than they need, to not expect ease. And in the language of Feng Shui, that belief gets wired into the home, into behaviors, into stove habits. One burner, one flow, one narrow window for money to arrive then evaporate. because anything more feels wasteful or risky or even undeserved. And just like that, Feng Shui turns personal. It's kind of like driving a 4-lane highway, but staying in the far right lane for months. Same speed, same path, same view. Safe? Sure. But it limits what the road was built to offer. Josh's stove had 4 burners. 4 directions of energy, abundance, cash flow. But he kept wealth in a holding pattern. He didn't mean to. He just never thought of turning the wheel. That one burner? It was comfort. It was control. But it wasn't freedom. And the kitchen started reflecting back the same story. Money never stretched wide enough. It cooked, but never boiled. Josh didn't read it in a book. He got the idea from his aunt, who'd lived through some hard years. She always used the same burner, he told me. Said it was quicker, easier to clean. I guess I just picked it up. But when his cousin moved in for a bit, she started using all the burners. Nothing fancy. She just cooked real meals, let things simmer. And something shifted. Josh started noticing more rhythm. More random checks. More space. Even his sleep felt better. Turns out, what looks like a small habit is actually an energy cue to your nervous system. And Feng Shui knows that. It teaches us to move qi with intention, not just routine. So Josh made one change. He committed to rotating burners. Even if it felt silly at first. Even if the left back burner took longer to heat. He turned them on just to warm water. He shifted his rhythm. Then he added a small money bowl right on the kitchen counter. Nothing big. Just citrine, some coins, and a red ribbon. That's when the kitchen started feeling different. Like something finally woke up. He wasn't chasing cash anymore. He was holding space for it. And the stove? No longer lonely. It became a circle of intention. 4 directions. 4 flames. 4 open doors to wealth. Josh joked that he used to treat his kitchen like a microwave. 1 corner, 1 setting, 1 result. Now, he laughs every time he turns on the back burner and hears it pop. That's the sound of rich living, baby, he says. Even if it's just boiling water for tea. Because in Feng Shui, it's not about how fancy your kitchen is. It's about whether your space reflects what you believe you deserve. Don't just cook your food, cook your fortune. The way you heat your food might be the same way you handle your money. Out of habit, not alignment. Some Feng Shui mistakes don't show up as clutter. They don't make noise. They just sit quietly balancing chaos inside beauty. And the kitchen? That's where the elements speak. Because when fire and water collide, money doesn't just leak, it boils, floods, and vanishes. A few weeks after Josh changed how he used his stove, things felt better. More tips. 1 surprise payment from a job he forgot about. Even his dog seemed calmer. But not everything held. One morning, while making coffee, he knocked over a glass. It shattered right between the stove and the sink. No big deal, right? But the second he bent down to clean it, he noticed something. The stove and the sink were too close. Like a few inches apart. 1 flame, 1 faucet, elbow to elbow. He'd never noticed it before. But that morning, it felt loud. Almost like the 2 parts of his kitchen were arguing. And weirdly enough, the tension he thought had calmed was back. Small annoyances returned. Delayed payments. a weird refund error from the bank. His groceries spoiled faster than usual. He felt rushed and tired, like he couldn't relax in the space. It wasn't messy. It wasn't broken. But the kitchen felt unrested. And so did he. In Feng Shui, the stove is fire. It's the symbol of wealth, action, motivation, and output. The sink is water. It represents cleansing, emotions, intuition, and letting go. When they're too closer directly across from each other, their energies start to fight. Fire wants to rise. Water wants to cool. And if you place them side by side, the home's chi gets confused. The result? Wealth starts burning too fast, or money starts flushing away too easily. Either way, the lucky flow collapses. Josh didn't know it yet, but that sink-stove alignment was silently undoing the progress he'd just started to rebuild. Because Feng Shui isn't just about fixing one thing. It's about understanding how energy interacts, and how one invisible clash can slow down even your best efforts. This was Josh's shift into the fixer spiral. People in this phase start doing the work. They change a habit, improve a flow, open a door. And it works for a while. But then they crash into something deeper, a root-level imbalance that's been hiding under convenience. In Josh's case, the layout of the kitchen wasn't his fault. He didn't build it. He didn't even question it. But now he could feel how it pulled him apart. Mornings became edgy. He dropped more things. He felt emotionally flooded over little stuff, like forgetting to defrost dinner or hearing bad news in a podcast. And that's what the fire-water clash does. It splits the body's energy, makes you reactive, makes money harder to hold. You think you're doing all the right things, but the flow stays messy because the space is still sending mixed signals, and the nervous system listens. Josh described it best without even trying. He was venting to his friend and said, "My kitchen feels like it's breathing in and out at the same time." That's exactly what a fire-water clash does. It creates a push-pull loop that keeps energy trapped in motion, but never at peace. It's like trying to boil tea while someone keeps pouring cold water into the kettle. It never fully heats. It never fully cools. It just exists in stress. The kitchen looks clean. The meals come out fine. But the energy? Always under pressure. Josh had unknowingly designed a setup where fire and water were trying to dominate the same space every single day. And his body, his finances, and even his focus started to echo that struggle. Josh didn't learn this from a Feng Shui class. He figured it out because of his therapist. They were talking about burnout, and she asked him to describe his mornings at home. He mentioned how he rushes between the sink and the stove, feeling tight even before breakfast. That's when she said, "Sometimes burnout isn't from work. It's from spaces that don't let you rest into them." That hit him. So he went home, stood in the kitchen, and just watched how he moved. Everything was crammed. His movements weren't fluid. He was reacting, not choosing. And Feng Shui agrees. When elements clash, the body gets confused. Confusion creates tension. Tension blocks money. That's why energy in the kitchen is felt long before it's understood. Josh didn't tear down his kitchen. He couldn't afford that. But he did something small that shifted the chi. He added a wood cutting board between the stove and the sink. Wood in Feng Shui balances water and fire. It absorbs conflict, then turns it into new energy. He also put a tiny plant nearby rosemary in a jar. Something alive, growing. The change wasn't flashy, but the space felt calmer. He didn't bump into things as much. He stopped overcooking meals. And weirdly, he started waking up a few minutes before his alarm. Money didn't pour in overnight, but it stopped disappearing. And that, to Josh, felt like wealth. Josh now calls that wooden board his kitchen referee. No more fights, he jokes. Fire and water get along now thanks to a $9 piece of wood. Sometimes, all it takes is a small shift to break a big loop. Because in Feng Shui, a home doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to stop arguing with itself. When your fire and water keep clashing, don't just fix the mess, balance the conversation. The kitchen looked fine, but something felt constantly stirred up. No matter how calm the space looked, it felt restless. It wasn't loud energy, but it wasn't peaceful either. Money didn't flow in or out, it just swirled. The cash energy felt like it was boiling too fast to hold. Abundance can't grow in a tug of war. Josh says if his kitchen were a couple, they'd need marriage counseling. Now he calls his stove and sink fire and ice, but at least they're on speaking terms. In Feng Shui, energy doesn't just move through walls. It moves through what we allow and what we ignore. And sometimes it's not the big stuff that blocks our money flow. It's the quiet mess we call normal. Josh was making progress. Rotating burners, balancing fire and water, even sleeping better. But by the end of the month, he noticed a new tension. Not stress exactly, just a subtle edge to everything. He couldn't find things as quickly. Little spills kept happening. Groceries didn't fit where they used to. And worst of all, he stopped wanting to cook. That was weird. Because Josh loved cooking. It was his reset button. But now, even thinking about stepping into the kitchen felt heavy. Not dramatic, just dull. Like the space had gone from warm to flat. And money? Same story. It wasn't crashing, but it wasn't climbing either. Jobs stalled. Venmo requests didn't go through. One freelance client ghosted him for 2 weeks. Something was stuck, but it didn't shout. It just sat there. Quiet, crowded, familiar. Josh didn't realize it at first, but his kitchen counter had slowly become a holding zone for everything. Air fryer, blender, mail stack, protein bars, half-used candle, salt lamp, reusable grocery bags, a coffee mug from 3 mornings ago. And to be fair, it didn't look messy. It looked like normal, busy person life. But in Feng Shui, clutter on the kitchen counter is a direct block to wealth energy. That surface isn't just for food. It's a stage for abundance, chi movement, and daily flow. When it's covered, the energy can't breathe. And neither can your money. Josh had cleared the stove, balanced the sink. But now, the chi had nowhere to land. It kept bumping into stuff, just like he did. This is the functional piler. People like Josh keep things accessible because it feels productive. They're not hoarders. They're not lazy. They're just efficient. But underneath that, there's usually a quiet belief. If I put it away, I'll forget. If I leave it out, I'll stay on top of it. And energetically, that turns your home into a reminder loop. Not a space for calm, but a space for constant micro-pressure. Josh wasn't avoiding. He was bracing. That countertop said, "Don't slow down." It said, "Stay alert." It said, "One more thing before you rest." And in Feng Shui, that kind of surface tension creates actual tension in the nervous system, which then ripples into how money feels. Not graceful, not flowing, but cluttered. Like everything was coming in sideways. It's kind of like trying to walk through a room where every chair is pulled out just a few inches. You can get through. You're not blocked, but you're always adjusting, always avoiding, always a little on. Josh didn't realize how much his body was adapting until he cleared half the counter one Sunday. Just half. Nothing huge. And the next morning, he cooked eggs and didn't spill once. He poured coffee and didn't knock over the creamer. That day, he landed a gig he forgot he even pitched. Because sometimes the energy doesn't change until the space finally gets to exhale. Josh didn't find this one on Google. It hit him while watching a documentary. Someone in the film mentioned how clutter keeps your brain in decision mode, even when you're trying to relax. He paused the video, turned toward his kitchen, and just stood there. Every item on the counter felt like a question. Do this. Remember that. Don't forget me. No wonder his money felt scattered. No wonder his energy didn't land. Feng Shui teaches that surfaces hold energetic permission. They say you're safe to rest here, or you're expected to hustle. Josh realized his kitchen wasn't sabotaging him. It was just over-talking, and he was too tired to keep listening. If you've ever felt like you're always tidying, but never actually clearing, like your energy is circling instead of landing, you're not alone, and you're not messy. You're just in a space that's asking too much of your energy. If this kind of wisdom helps you exhale even a little, we'd love to know you're with us. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, or comment below. It's the kind of click that tells YouTube, this is the kind of content that lets people breathe again. Josh cleared the counter in layers. Day 1. Trash and expired snacks. Day 2. The mail pile. Day 3. The maybe I'll use this gadgets. He didn't buy anything new. Didn't light sage. Didn't post it on Instagram. He just made space. Then he added one thing. A clear glass bowl with water, a floating lemon slice, and a few coins. Feng Shui loves this setup. Clean, bright, and active qi. And within a week, Josh felt his flow returning. Not dramatic, but real. More tips. Less rushing. Better meals. A sense of enough. And one morning, standing by the counter, he whispered, "This feels lucky." Josh now calls his kitchen counter the welcome mat for money. He jokes, "If there's no room for my keys, there's no room for cash either." He still leaves out his blender sometimes, but now it shares space with peace. Because in Feng Shui, decluttering isn't about control. It's about invitation. And when the counter feels clear, the day feels possible. Even breakfast tastes richer. The surfaces you ignore might be the places your wealth is waiting to land. The space wasn't loud, but it wasn't quiet either. Everything looked okay, but it felt like too much. The energy kept bouncing, not resting. Money felt spread thin, like it didn't know where to land. Abundance doesn't like confusion, it likes clarity. Cash energy doesn't sit well where there's no space. Josh says if clutter were an app, his kitchen counter had all the notifications. Now he calls the blender Greg. Greg has to ask permission to stay out overnight. In Feng Shui, energy doesn't just move through walls. It moves through what we allow and what we ignore. And sometimes it's not the big stuff that blocks our money flow. It's the quiet mess we call normal. Josh was making progress. Rotating burners, balancing fire and water, even sleeping better. But by the end of the month, he noticed a new tension. Not stress exactly, just a subtle edge to everything. He couldn't find things as quickly. Little spills kept happening. Groceries didn't fit where they used to. And worst of all, he stopped wanting to cook. That was weird, because Josh loved cooking. It was his reset button. But now, even thinking about stepping into the kitchen felt heavy. Not dramatic, just dull. Like the space had gone from warm to flat. And money? Same story. It wasn't crashing, but it wasn't climbing either. Jobs stalled. Venmo requests didn't go through. One freelance client ghosted him for 2 weeks. Something was stuck, but it didn't shout. It just sat there. Quiet, crowded, familiar. Josh didn't realize it at first, but his kitchen counter had slowly become a holding zone for everything. Air fryer, blender, mail stack, protein bars, half-used candle, salt lamp, reusable grocery bags, a coffee mug from 3 mornings ago. And to be fair, it didn't look messy. It looked like normal, busy person life. But in Feng Shui, clutter on the kitchen counter is a direct block to wealth energy. That surface isn't just for food. It's a stage for abundance, chi movement, and daily flow. When it's covered, the energy can't breathe. And neither can your money. Josh had cleared the stove, balanced the sink. But now, the chi had nowhere to land. It kept bumping into stuff, just like he did. This is the functional piler. People like Josh keep things accessible because it feels productive. They're not hoarders. They're not lazy. They're just efficient. But underneath that, there's usually a quiet belief. If I put it away, I'll forget. If I leave it out, I'll stay on top of it. And energetically, that turns your home into a reminder loop. Not a space for calm, but a space for constant micro-pressure. Josh wasn't avoiding. He was bracing. That countertop said, "Don't slow down." It said, "Stay alert." It said, "One more thing before you rest." And in Feng Shui, that kind of surface tension creates actual tension in the nervous system, which then ripples into how money feels. Not graceful, not flowing, but cluttered. Like everything was coming in sideways. It's kind of like putting your dreams in a file folder, then locking that folder in a drawer, then slowly forgetting the drawer exists. The food was still there. The lights were still on, but nothing felt fresh. Josh said the fridge became just another machine. That's what happens when Feng Shui gets iced over. Energy goes flat. Momentum disappears. And money starts matching that vibe. Present, but lifeless. It's like your abundance is technically here, but can't reach you. And the longer it stays that way, the more you normalize quiet lack. Josh didn't get this from a Feng Shui book. It hit him during a chat with his cousin who does energy work. she asked. Is there any part of your kitchen that feels like a no? Josh said, Yeah, the fridge corner. It feels like a dead spot. She nodded. That's where your money's probably parking without a key. Turns out, the nervous system registers still energy, the same way it registers isolation. When a corner doesn't have light, movement, or attention, the body labels it as off limits. And that internal message leaks into behavior. You stop going near it. You stop checking certain bills. You stop cooking real meals. You forget your leftovers. You start making smaller grocery runs. All tiny signs of shrinking flow. Feng Shui doesn't just fix furniture. It releases held energy, so the body can believe abundance is safe again. Josh didn't move the fridge, but he moved the energy. He placed a mirror on the wall adjacent to reflect light and create space. Then he added a citrus bowl with oranges and a little gold ribbon. He put a small bamboo plant above the fridge, then cleared the top completely. 1 week later, the fridge felt awake. He opened it and actually smiled. He stopped ordering takeout, cooked twice that week. And energy? Client followed up. Check came through. Someone paid him early. It wasn't magic. It was unfreezing flow. And now that corner didn't feel like silence. It felt like storage with soul. Josh now calls it his abundance fridge. He jokes, if my fridge is gonna hoard cold air, at least let it cool something rich. He even named the bamboo plant Mr. Flow. Says it keeps the fridge company. And now, he wipes the fridge down every Friday night. Not because he has to, because it feels like resetting his wealth engine. When your fridge becomes a dead zone, your wealth starts holding its breath. The space felt slow, like even air didn't want to move there. It wasn't broken, just disconnected. Energy felt frozen in place. Cash didn't disappear, it just got cold and unhelpful. Abundance can't grow in places that don't feel alive. Money wasn't gone, just stopped circulating. Josh says if his fridge had feelings, it needed therapy for abandonment. Now he calls the back corner frozen assets. Feng Shui isn't just about fixing what's wrong. It's about listening for what's missing. Because when a space stops inviting you in, money stops showing up too. Josh had done everything. He used every burner, balanced fire and water, cleared the counter, reawakened the fridge corner. And yet, one evening, after a long day, he stood in the middle of his kitchen and realized he didn't want to be there. There was no noise, no mess, no fight, just nothing. He leaned against the counter, but it didn't feel grounding. He walked to the sink, but it didn't feel alive. He opened the fridge, but it didn't stir anything inside. It felt like a kitchen with the lights on, but the spirit off. And that scared him more than clutter ever did. Because energy wasn't stuck anymore. It was absent. In Feng Shui, a kitchen isn't just a functional space. It's the hearth of the home. It holds the qi that feeds you, not just with meals, but with worth, flow, and presence. But when a kitchen lacks invitation, when there's no warmth, no welcome, it becomes an energetic dead end. You might eat in it. You might clean it. But you won't thrive in it. And wealth? It senses that absence. Money in Feng Shui is not just numbers. It's movement, aliveness, and yes, emotion. Josh had cleared all the obvious blocks. But what was missing was him. His joy, his ritual, his connection. Without those, energy doesn't just freeze. It fades. And when energy fades, so does abundance. Josh was now in the ghost host phase. The space existed, but it had no emotional presence. This happens when people perform functionality, but disconnect from intention. You eat standing up. You multitask meals. You wipe the counter without breathing. You go through the motions, but you're never in the space. And that's where Qi goes quiet. Josh wasn't lazy. He was tired. Tired of trying. Tired of waiting for money to flow. Tired of hoping energy would rise. But in Feng Shui, when you stop participating, the space starts mirroring your absence. Josh had built a beautiful kitchen on paper, but energetically, it felt like no one lived there. And money doesn't come home to places that feel empty of welcome. It's kind of like hosting a dinner party, but forgetting to greet your guests at the door. You made the food. You set the table, but no one feels seen. That's what Josh's kitchen became. Well prepared, but uninviting. He even caught himself walking into the room, then walking out with a snack never stopping. Even the dog stopped hanging out near the stove. It wasn't a bad kitchen. It just wasn't alive. And the more lifeless it became, the more money matched that tone. Payments delayed. Online sales went flat. He felt like life was skipping over him. Because Feng Shui doesn't reward perfection. It responds to presence. Josh realized it one night while watching a YouTube video about blue zones. Those rare places where people live long, vibrant lives. One thing they all had in common? Communal eating. Spaces that felt warm. Meals that felt shared. And then it hit him. His kitchen didn't feel lived in. It felt executed. He had optimized everything, but forgot the most important thing, joy. Feng Shui is about energy, yes. But the nervous system is part of that. And when your body doesn't feel invited, your brain doesn't signal trust. And trust is what opens wealth. Not just a clean space, a connected one. Josh didn't burn sage or buy new cookware. He just cooked one meal, Saturday down, played music, lit a tea light. Then he whispered, "Welcome home." And something shifted. He started leaving fruit out in a bowl again. Not for guests. For himself. He began humming while washing dishes. He brought in a chair from the balcony just to sit. And within days, he landed 2 new jobs. An old client returned with a bigger offer. His sleep deepened. He stopped rushing his mornings. Not because of luck, but because the Qi came back. And when energy comes back, so does money. Josh now calls that tea light his kitchen pilot light. Says it keeps the energy warm even if he's just microwaving soup. He also keeps a sticky note inside a drawer that says, "This space is a welcome, not a task." Because sometimes the richest thing you can give your kitchen is your attention. And once that shows up, money doesn't need an invitation. It walks in. A kitchen without welcome is like a bank account without belief. The kitchen looked fine but felt emotionally unplugged. Everything was working, but nothing felt working. The space felt paused, like it was waiting for someone to care. Money didn't stop. It just stopped feeling connected. Abundance felt like it passed through but didn't land. Cash energy isn't drawn to silence, it's drawn to warmth. Josh says his kitchen used to feel like a showroom clean, quiet, and a little soulless. Now he says it feels like a diner at 2 a.m. A little messy, but it knows your name. If your kitchen has ever felt too quiet, too cold, or just a little disconnected, you're not alone. Sometimes the energy isn't blocked. It's just waiting for us to show up differently. In Feng Shui, money doesn't just come from action. It flows from alignment, from warmth, from presence. So if this video helped shift something for you, even just a thought, even just a pause, feel free to like, subscribe, or share your experience below. We post 2 videos every single day. Because sometimes it's not the big overhauls. It's the small Feng Shui shifts that wake the wealth back up. Your home is speaking. Your energy is listening. And we're here for that quiet, powerful change. Together. Your space speaks. Wisdom listens.